Good. So, well, it's great. I always say this, and I feel it really deep down in me doing podcasting. I always love it when I can return to a really good guest that we had a good conversation and we catch up and we get to see kind of what's been going on. So
Yeah,
that's how I'm going to introduce it. It's great to see you, Terry.
perfect.
Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for context for everybody out there to understand, I had gotten on Podmatch, which is a brilliant platform that is really honors and validates the podcasting world in a way that we've been waiting for a long time. And it's maturated, and 4 years later, we're here. You were one of my very first interviews, and it was only audio. So we're in true living color. We have Peg Unhinged. We have new work, new things. So before we get to the book, what's been going on in the last 4 years?
Oh, I mean, you don't have enough time for that. That's
I probably don't.
no, you don't. So a lot. I had one novel when we spoke last.
Yeah, yeah.
I now have four novels. I have an inspirational memoir about my trip across the United States on a tandem bicycle. I have a children's book. I have three short stories in three different anthologies. Um, I have a podcast now called Online for Authors. I am a guest on another, like a guest host on another podcast called The Teri and Edith Show. I have a micro podcast where it's like a 2 minute long where I get authors to read the first paragraph of their book called The Book Hook. Um, and all of that is the great stuff. The less fortunate thing is that my husband was diagnosed with brain cancer and passed away a year and a half ago.
Wow.
So I've had that as well. So there has just been, yeah, 4 years. My life has completely changed for good and for not as good. And I think, isn't that just life?
It is life, but I think when you talk about what you're doing with all these projects, writing, and I know personally I've written for a long time, it's always been a therapeutic avenue of
Yeah.
dealing with
Yeah.
life. Of do you feel like that writing is that therapeutic bridge for you to
Yes.
get over
You
loss?
know, and what's interesting is right after Bruce died, I could not write. I didn't feel like I had anything to say. I had so much to say I didn't even know how to form and put it on in put it down. And my therapist kept pushing me. You got to write something. You should write something. And I kept saying no one will want to read what I have to say because at the time I was just feeling very angry and distraught and I hated everyone. It was not a good period. And he just kept saying, write it down. Well, in anger, I wrote down this little like a flash fiction, and I just wrote it, and it was called Bucket List. And I was asking people essentially, what's on your bucket list? And then I told them what was on mine. And mine was things like, asking my husband whether he would rather have Raisin Bran or Cheerios for breakfast,
Yeah.
those kinds of things. And I was angry when I wrote it. And I was
Sure.
really angry at my therapist, right? And so I get it all down. And about a month later, I see a contest and they want something that is like from real life. And I thought, well, shoot, I'll just put it in. Nobody's going to want it. And it won second place.
Wow.
So I was surprised because I didn't think that anyone would want to dive into the mess that was Terry 4 months after I'd lost my husband. And as it turns out, people did want to dive into that mess with me. Yeah, and writing does it. Sometimes I get things out of off my chest, so they're written out there. And
Yeah.
then sometimes I don't know, go into my own little world, and that is also really good for me. Because you can get kind of stuck in your own little loop. And
Yeah.
I write and I become someone else. I'm in a different world. I'm writing something different. And what's really amazing is I wrote Peg Unhinged as the first thing that I wrote after Bruce died, like the first novel. And it's a humor.
Yeah.
And that's crazy because I wasn't feeling funny.
Right.
But I think I needed to tap into that other aspect of me because my world didn't feel funny. Everything around me felt so austere and difficult. And somehow being able to jump in and find that humorous side of me again was really beneficial.
That's a weird psychological irony, and it's so true that when we do get to that real raw point, like winning second place and doing that, like
Yeah,
that's when the real literature comes out. Because to this day, like reading *100 Years of Solitude in some of those classes, it's like, my God, I can't do this anymore.
right,
It's too
right.
much. But that's the way really good writers, it's like comedians.
Yeah,
Comedians are some of the most tragic people on the planet. When you really peel back the facade of the greatest comedians of all time, there is a
right,
tragedy that lies underneath, and it's kind of a part of your process of finding that humor through the stark, dark tragedy of being alive
right,
on this planet.
right. I mean, I don't know, I just think there's something really valuable to being able to also see that there's more than one side of things.
Yeah.
Like, yes, it was very difficult. I lost someone that I loved who wants to be alone. I didn't intend to be at this point in my life where I was having to make these changes. All of it was kind of like, ah. But at the same time, my books were doing well. I was living life. I was more grandchildren were being born. There was good. And
Yeah.
it's really hard sometimes to sit in a space where it's bad and it's good and that they're happening simultaneously. And then what are you supposed to do with all of that? And I think writing kind of helps me hold these different aspects and say, okay, it's all here and it's all okay.
And through the stages of grief, you realize that to honor the spirit of those that have left us, your husband's going to want you to write. He's going to
Oh,
want
yeah.
you to do right. And then, but that's not something you see in the beginning. There is so
No, no.
much
Yeah.
vitriol and noise that you can't do it until things quiet down a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I went on a writer's retreat in August. So he passed away in January. And I went on this retreat. It was 3 weeks and it was in New York, far away from my home in North Carolina. And I drove because I wanted my own vehicle while I was there. And so I had 2 days to drive there. And by the time I got there, I had things to say and I was able to start writing. And I think I needed to maybe get away from my own space. I needed the 2 day drive to just let my mind do its thing. Um, yeah, and from that point on, now I'm writing again, and I feel, yes, I'm still grieving, and yes, I'm still writing, and but there was a point in there where there was just nothing coming out of me.
So now that you've picked up in earnest and you're writing all the time, is that, you always hear that King quote, and he wasn't the first one that said it, but he's certainly one of the most popular ones that talks about doing it every day.
I don't write every day, but I do. I It's so hard to explain because my process is not one where I sit down at the computer at 6 a.m. and write for 3 hours. I don't like to be molded into that kind of space. I lived in an abusive relationship for 14 years, and that feels very abusive to me that I force myself to do something, even if I'm not in the mood or whatever,
Yeah.
right? But my writing process often requires things like a long walk because while I'm walking, my mind is churning things over. Or maybe it's I've written a lot and now I need to let it percolate for a while.
Yeah.
And so I'll go and write maybe a flash fiction, something, just, to write, but not to write on my work in progress. So I think I do write every day, but not necessarily the way people in their minds think of it. I'm not always working on my work in progress. I'm not always doing it at a certain time. I'm not always doing it here at my desk. I actually like to write other places, be other places when I'm writing. So,
It's interesting that saying that you're writing but not writing, it just flashed something in my head. So I've tried to figure out this whole meditation idea, and I've done it before, and I've gotten the apps, and I've tried to get into it. And I was listening to some interviews with Joseph Campbell that he was doing with Bill Moyers, and they were talking about meditation. And Joseph is such a brilliant thinker, and he said, "You know what? If you're in a quiet space thinking about your family, thinking about things and loving the people that you're around and wishing for the best for them, that's meditation. There's levels of meditation that exist in the quiet of the morning when your cat's next to you or your animals just got fed and they can kind of lay down and you can hear them breathe. I think there's levels of us that meditate without specifically being in a space and holding that cord. And I think that's the thing that I felt comforted by because I don't do it in a traditional way, but it's that same thing. You're writing all the time. You're doing ideas. I mean, you could jot an idea down and it's writing and then elaborate, those kinds of things.
Right. And I think for me too, I try things out in my head.
Yeah.
Like I'll be washing dishes and this idea will come to me and I will play it out. I think, yeah, that's not going to go anywhere. And then I let it go. Well, that just saved me time. So now I'm not sitting down at the computer writing it and then trashing it. I've already kind of written it and trashed it in my head. So I have a lot of, I don't know, I am not, I tell people I am not the person that you should emulate when it comes to, the writing life, because people who, I don't know, you hear these greats and they talk about you write every day, you have a set time, you put it on your calendar, and it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
I'm more of a binge writer because when I sit down to write, it's because I have this amazing idea and I'll write for hours and hours and hours. And I look up and I think, where am I? Like I don't even know. I haven't eaten, I haven't showered, I haven't done anything. And then I won't really sit down like that again, maybe for several days.
Yeah.
But I'm working on it.
Yeah.
It's in my head. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can do it again. So I wouldn't recommend binge writing, but it kind of is how it works for me.
Yeah.
And then I also am not a planner. I'm very much a pantser where I right by the seat of my pants, I get an idea and I get an idea for a novel and it is not what people think. It is like a scene or a character or one line. And I think, ooh, I could do something with that. And I just start writing and see where it goes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend that either. I
Yeah.
don't, but I've tried so hard to be a plotter. And Terry's right brain and Terry's left brain do not speak to one another.
Yeah.
And so Terry the left-brained plotter and Terry the right-brained writer, they don't like each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I say the person that's sitting before you right now, this is me very much in the left brain, got things, I've got a list, I know what I'm doing today, everything, she's not a writer. This person you see, I don't write. The other Terry that comes out when I open up the space, she's the writer and she has to kick me out of the room because I will try to like sabotage the whole thing with, my lists. And it's a very interesting,
Yeah,
yeah.
it is. It is. It's kind of like the devils and the angels that kind of
Yeah.
mingle with each other, right? So, one of the questions that I've kind of developed with writers over time since we interviewed last is this idea that, we live in this world of documentaries. We're documenting sports teams from, horrible losses to championships and musicians and all of this, but you don't see that with writers. It's a solitary act. You just don't get that vignette. So my question to you is this: if you could go and watch any writer in the history of writing novels and being at the top of their game, who would you love to watch create?
Oh, I don't, I've never even considered that before. That is really a good question. Um, I probably would want to watch John Steinbeck. And the
Okay.
and the reason is, and this is, I mean, just like I was an avid reader from the point I don't ever remember not reading. I honestly do not remember a time when I could not read. I always read books, but I read books for the fun of reading. Just they were good books. And I was sitting in an English literature class in ninth grade when the teacher said something along the lines of John Steinbeck wanted you to learn and then gave, what she felt John Steinbeck wanted me to learn. And I had this aha moment where it was, wait a minute, there's more than a good story going on here. There's a lesson. There's something here that the author is trying to, within the good story, is trying to impart to me. And wow, that like opened up this just, it was amazing to me because I had never, it's not that I didn't get things from the books that I was reading, but I'd never considered the fact that the
Yeah.
author was trying to do that.
Yep.
So I think it would be fun to go and just watch him. And I would love to be in his head, like not just watching, but like I would love to hear the brain process because sometimes when I'm writing and people will say later, oh, I got such and so out of it. And, you know, I'd like to know what you were thinking. And it's like, I wasn't thinking that.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know, what you got from it is fabulous. And I'm amazed. But no, it never crossed my mind.
And we're getting to a point now with AI and technology where that's probably not far away, where there is a chance, and that could be really scary. We could start
Yeah.
wars if that
Yeah.
happened.
I'm not letting anybody in my head. That's
Yeah, we don't need that. The reason why I came up with that question is I've always fantasized about the kitchenette that Hemingway sat at with like 20 cats around him and all those
yeah.
tails wagging and all of this Florida light spilling in and the half glass of orange juice and just bam, he's just slapping those keys on that old typewriter of
Right.
his. That
Right.
kind of thing, that
Yeah.
romantic Norman Rockwell painting kind of thing.
But you know, the thing is that's what we have in our head.
Yeah,
And you would get there and you would find out that it didn't look or feel like what you have in your head
yeah.
because you would end up landing with him on some day where it wasn't going well, and
Oh,
he slammed the orange juice off his desk and kicked one of the cats and saying like
yeah.
it's we romanticize so much about like, oh, what does it look like? I have found so many people who say to me, oh, you're an author. And it's like, it's not quite as awe-inspiring as
Yeah.
you would like to think.
Yeah.
I had a neighbor that did that and came up to me and said, I understand you write books, and do you have, yeah, it was Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, do you have that for sale? And I said, yeah, and come on in. And then I said, would you like me to sign it for you? And she was like, oh, would you? And then she said, I've never had a book signed by an author. And I want to say, I went to the grocery store this morning,
Yeah.
right? Like
Right.
Food Lion, just like you.
Yep.
It's really weird because people do have this idea somehow that authors are otherworldly.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's
like
like, yeah, no, I had to make my bed this morning. I've got dirty laundry that needs doing. I got to run to the grocery store. I'm down to like one apple and no other fruit. Like I'm
yep.
normal,
Yep.
very normal. I actually asked someone one time, I said, like, do you do this when the plumber comes? Oh, it's a plumber. I said, no. So
Yeah.
what is it? So yeah.
It's interesting. It's kind of what you're kind of saying too is it's be careful about meeting your heroes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why they say that. I mean, there's a lot of good instances, but there could be that one Hemingway moment where it's like he's gonna come after you.
Well, and the thing is Hemingway was human, just
Oh
like
yeah.
you and me.
Uh-huh.
He had good days, he had bad days. He had things he wrote that were crap. I
Yeah.
can guarantee it.
Oh yeah.
How do I know? Because I've written things that were crap and I've thrown them away or I've tucked them away somewhere where no one will find them, right?
Yeah.
And he was the same.
Hmm.
We only get to see the the pieces he wanted us to
Oh
see.
yeah.
It's kind of like getting on Facebook, and you only get to see whatever someone puts out to the world, but you don't get to see the nitty-gritty moments. And
History.
if you do get to see the nitty-gritty moments, they're only the ones they wanted you to see.
That's
You
it.
didn't get to see the other ones.
Yeah, history is carefully edited and it's written by the
Oh yeah.
champions, right?
Yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah.
so Peg Unhinged, you kind of opened the door up a little bit to it, but I'm curious, what was kind of now that you look back on that in light of the loss that you went through, do you find that this was a cathartic, huge leap for you to get back into that saddle and write more?
Absolutely. And it allowed me to leave myself
Hmm.
because I wasn't feeling humorous and I wasn't feeling happy and but I was able to kind of channel that piece of me that was very much missing at that stage.
Yeah.
Um, and it was a lot of fun to write. I very much like Peg. Peg is not me, but there's a lot of me in her, like, and her humor is my humor. It's very much, I'm kind of the sarcastic humor, tongue in cheek, roll my eyes kind of humor. And that was it. And it was fun to find that again.
Yeah.
When you're grieving, humor is not top of mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, when you laugh, you sometimes look around to see if that was okay,
Right. Yeah.
right? Like, is anyone judging me because I've lost my husband and I'm laughing?
Yeah.
and
Right.
it's like, so there's all of that. So it was really, I think it was really good for me to tap into a space that I wasn't tapping into in my regular, everyday, normal life.
So I'm curious, what kind of responses have you been getting? What's been kind of the feedback?
Everyone is really liking the book, which is great. I've had a couple of people say they didn't like it, but you can't please everyone. So I'm not
Yeah.
worried about that. But generally, people have women. So I write mostly for women. And this book is definitely written for women. I've had a few men read it who've liked it, but they've got wives who are going through menopause. So they kind of say, oh, that gives us some insight into what women are thinking during this period of time. But there are so few books with midlife women
Yeah.
as the main character. Um, and midlife women who are going through menopause or going through divorce, and she's going through both, and changing jobs, finding themselves empty nested, all of these things that really change how a woman sees herself. We don't get to see that character very often.
Yeah. We don't.
And this is very, it dives right in. And we go with Peg, and she is so unhinged when we get started. I mean, this is a woman whose hormones have got the best of her, and her way of handling it is, if you can, you can't think of a worse way to handle it than what she's doing. And yet there she goes, right? But you love her immediately because you just want her to, like, come on, you can win, you can win. And you get to see her finally starting to come to terms with who she is now and what she wants for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
You know, um, not a huge social commentary, but women are often kind of told who they are and how they're going to be.
Sure.
And we often get married and we have children, and we're either trying to juggle a job with children or we're staying at home with our children. And eventually that period, that era kind of ends. And we're left standing there going, well, now what?
Yeah.
Who am I now? And we don't talk about that. We say the empty nest syndrome, but then that's about it. No one really dives in. And I just really decided to dive in. And I did it with humor, but there are very poignant moments
Yeah.
where you see things that are happening to her and you understand what she's going through. So the biggest things that I'm getting are, it's funny, I loved it, and boy did I understand her, and have I felt seen and heard after reading this book. So
It kind of reminds me the metaphor of like when you're traveling and they've cut through a mountain and you can see all of the layers of
yes.
sediment. That's what happens to all of us, especially women, though, because there's such a level of marginalization that goes in through our society. But also what's interesting, and I don't know that we talked about it before as much because I think it's developed more. There really is a war on women from the government now. Like all of these rescinded rights, and I'm not just talking about abortion, I'm talking about general care that people can't get down south in the most impoverished areas. And it's like, I never thought that we would get to a historical place in America of all places where all of these rights would be rescinded for women. Like what's going on? I mean, it's all run by men, but still, there used to be some level of decorum and progression and civility that went into this process.
Yeah. So I think it's not going to stick.
Right.
Because women aren't going to let it stick.
Yeah.
There was a time where women were relegated to a space where we had no voice, and we don't. We have a voice now. We're not stuck in that space. So sure, people can still try it, but I don't think it's going to stick for long. I think that women are going to come back with fury. Um, I recommend that the government be very careful and not tick off a menopausal woman because she's got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
In fact, I saw a meme that made me really laugh, and it was, if you're looking for a warrior, what you need is a menopausal woman because she's angry, she's hot, she doesn't sleep, she's not raising her children anymore, and she doesn't feel like she has anything to lose. You put her on the front lines and everyone's going to run.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, or they'll strap you in the back of Thelma and Louise's car before they go
Yes,
off the
seriously,
cliff. Right.
seriously. And so I think there's just a lot to women. we get to a particular age, and I'm 62 now, and I care as much what other people think.
Sure.
I mean, I care what my family thinks, those that love me.
Yep.
I worry about them. But in terms of, oh, Teri, you shouldn't wear those pants because they have a pattern to them and it might make your hips look big. Don't look.
Yeah. Right.
If my hips are too big for you to look at, then don't look,
Yep.
because I'm going to wear what I want to wear,
Hmm.
and I'm going to write what I want to write, and I'm going to sing what I want to sing. Like, there's just a different attitude, and it
Yep.
starts to happen right around the time that we start losing all of those hormones, where everything goes on the switch, and we're just like, you know what? You're not telling me what to do anymore. I saw this really cool, I don't know, it was called the happiness curve. And they show it with women, and the happiness is like really high when you're young, and then it just like dips and dips and dips and dips until about 50. And then every decade after that, it goes up and up and up and up and up again. Well, I think it's because somewhere around 50, we say, telling us what to do.
Yep. Yep.
I'm tired of that. I'm going to do me. And once we start doing what we want our way, yeah, the happiness curve goes up. I
Yeah.
don't think the curve is the same for men.
Yeah, no, I don't think it is either. I was just thinking about when Trump tried to pick a fight with the Italian premier, and she's in that
Yeah.
age category. Plus,
Yeah.
she's an older Italian woman. Like, you
Yeah.
unleashed a fury that
Yeah,
is
like don't do that. This
don't.
is,
It's
yeah,
not.
like read the room. That was
Right.
not wise,
Yeah, that was not the
Yeah.
person to pick a fight with at
No,
all.
no, definitely, if you're going to pick a fight, you don't do it with a menopausal woman who, or postmenopausal woman who
Yeah.
has decided who she is and
Uh-huh.
how she's going to interact with the world now.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what Peg Unhinged is. She's at that point, probably where her happiness curve is right at the very bottom, and she's figuring out how to turn it upward again.
I'm back
So
up there.
yeah.
So if anybody wants to pick up this book, your other wonderful books, reach out. All of the busy good work that you're doing, where do they go?
Best place is to go to my website. It's my name, TeriMBrown.com, and that's TeriMBrown.com. There you can find everything. You can find my books, my podcasts, um, everything that I've been on recently. You can sign up for my newsletter. All my social media icons are there. It's truly the most central place to go. And then from there, you can follow me wherever it works best for you.
Cool. Well, I will tell you one thing I did since we spoke last. I've been writing for a long, long time, and specifically poetry, and I published my first book in 2024. Got a local
Awesome.
press here called
Yeah.
Sparrow, and it was really cool because it's that adrenal rush when you get that box on your
Oh,
front porch.
isn't it awesome?
Oh
And you
my
see
God.
your name in print, and what's great is I was afraid that would start to fade. And my latest book came in April, so that's when Peg Unhinged came in the box to me. And it was just as wonderful as when it happened in January
Yeah.
of 24. I mean,
Yeah.
there was, of 22. I mean, it was just this,
I know.
what's my name?
So
I
much
don't know.
work. Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, there's so many moving pieces. It's like even when I look at a movie and at the very end, you see that enormous amount of credits that go through it.
Yes.
They have
Yeah.
to feel like that every time they go to a movie premiere. Like, my
They
God, look at all these things
look
that
at
had to
this, look at
happen.
this. And I was part of it. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
There's just something really amazing
yeah,
about knowing that I created it.
absolutely.
That this was mine, and I created it,
That's
and
it.
look, here it is. And yeah, I hope I never lose that. If I start losing that, then it's going to be time to change
Yeah.
and do something different.
Yeah, well, don't do it. Just keep it
Yeah.
going. Keep that little bird alive inside. This has been wonderful, Teri. So great to catch back up. As I said up front, these are the best. So we'll do it down the line. Keep chugging. We'll get back
Okay.
together down the line, and we'll talk about it. So thank you so much, and best of luck on the release.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely.